Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2702 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. In today's Wisdom Nugget, it's titled The Supreme Court of the Cosmos, the Judge of All Judges, and it's a trek through Psalm 82, verses 1 through 8. Today we're going to open and conclude the powerful and dramatic new chapter on our journey through the Psalms. We're embarking on this trek through Psalm 82 in the New Living Translation. Psalm 82, like many that we've explored, is attributed to Asaph. But after the celebratory festival in Psalm 81 and the laments of the national restoration in Psalm 80, this psalm introduces us to a truly outstanding scene. God himself acting as the supreme judge, standing in judgment over all other authorities. It's a divine courtroom, a cosmic tribunal, where God holds human rulers and judges accountable for their actions and corruption. This psalm, in just 8 short verses, provides a breathtaking glimpse into the heart of God's justice. It delivers a withering condemnation to those in power who abuse their authority, while simultaneously issuing a powerful command to defend the powerless. It reminds us that no matter how powerful or esteemed a human or divine leader may be, they are ultimately accountable to a higher authority, the one true judge of all the earth. So let's step into this dramatic scene and listen to the verdict from the supreme judge of the cosmos. This first section is the divine tribunal and the condemnation of the unjust. First, let's read verses 1 through 4. God presides over the heavens' courts. He pronounces judgment on the heavenly beings. How long will you hand down unjust decisions by favoring the wicked? And then there's an interlude. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and the helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. The psalm begins with truly a magnificent setting, a sobering scene. God presides over the heavens' courts and pronounces judgment on the heavenly beings. The heavens' court, or the divine council, was a common literary motif in the ancient Near East, but here it is uniquely apportioned to God's own absolute supremacy. These heavenly beings, or Elohim in the Hebrew, in this context are not God's divine rivals, but often interpreted as divine being, those rulers, perhaps even angelic beings entrusted with the oversight of the nations, of all whom are ultimately subordinate to God. God is the one and only supreme judge, and he is holding all other authorities, divine and human, accountable. He is standing over all the judges of the earth, watching every decision that they make. The first question God asks is a searing indictment of their failures. How long will you hand down unjust decisions by favoring the wicked? These echoes a familiar cry of the lament, How long, O Lord, from Psalm 79, verse 5. But this time the questions are directed from God to these unjust judges, the divine beings. It signifies God's righteous indignation and his perfect patience. Their injustices were not new. It's a prolonged pattern. Their sin is clear. They pervert justice by favoring the wicked and showing partiality, a practice explicitly forbidden in God's law. It seems that they take bribes, they bow to the powerful, and they rule in a way that benefits their evil rather than good. The interlude gives us a moment to reflect on the divine gravity of the divine questions. After the condemnation, God issues a clear, definitive command, providing the righteous blueprint for all authority. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and the helpless. Deliver them from the gossip of evil people. This command is a powerful contrast to their corruption. God tells these divine judges what they should be doing instead of perverting justice. The focus is on the most vulnerable in society, the poor, the orphan, the oppressed, the destitute, the helpless. These are the very people who lacked influence and power and a voice in the ancient world. God commands these divine judges to give justice, to uphold the rights, to rescue them, to deliver them. These are active verbs that require intentional, compassionate action. To give justice to the poor, which is the Hebrew word mishpat, means to ensure that they are treated fairly in legal matters. To uphold the rights means to actively advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. To rescue and deliver means to intervene, to save these helpless people from the grasp of evil people and evil divine beings who would exploit and abuse them. This is the very heart of God's justice, one that prioritizes protection of the vulnerable over the interest of the powerful. This is the same heart of God that we praised in Psalm 72, verses 13 and 14, where the ideal king will have pity on the poor and the needy and redeem them from oppression and violence. Here, God commands human rulers to reflect the same compassion. This first section establishes the powerful truth. God is the supreme judge, and all human and divine rulers are commanded to reflect his justice by actively defending the powerless. The next section is titled, The Fate of the Unjust and the Plea for God's Justice, and it's verses 5 through 8. But they are completely ignorant, and they understand nothing. They wander about in darkness as the foundations of the earth are shaken. I say, you are gods. You are all children of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals and fall like every other ruler. Arise, O God, and judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. After God's righteous command, the psalm with lament observes the ruler's current state, the state that leads to societal chaos. But they are completely ignorant, and they understand nothing. They wander about in darkness as the foundations of the earth are shaken. The but here signals a tragic reality. Despite God's clear indictment and command, the unjust rulers remain spiritually and intellectually blind. They are completely ignorant and understand nothing. That is, of God's divine perspective, his justice, and their own ultimate accountability. They are living in a state of spiritual darkness. The consequence of this blindness is that the entire society suffers, as the rulers wander about in darkness and the foundations of the earth are shaken. This is a powerful metaphor for social and political chaos. When the leaders and the divine rulers, the very pillars of society, are ignorant of God's truth and pervert justice, the entire societal order becomes unstable, tottering and teetering toward collapse. The stability of the nations directly tied to the unrighteousness of these divine leaders. Then comes the most remarkable and challenging pronouncement in all of Scripture. It's a divine paradox. I say, you are gods. You are all like children of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals and fall like every other ruler. God acknowledges the authority and status that he has given to these divine judges. The title gods, Elohim, is used here in a lowercase sense, signifying their divine commission at the Tower of Babel as to be God's representatives on earth acting on his behalf over the nations. In that role, they are indeed children of the Most High, but their authority is not self-appointed, it is divinely granted. However, the but introduces a devastating and sobering reality. Their divinely granted authority does not exempt them from their mortality or from judgment. They will die like mere mortals and fall like every other ruler. Their power is temporary and their lives are finite, and their ultimate fate is no different from those of the most common of men. Their divine commission does not grant them immortality or immunity from the grave. This serves as a powerful warning against the ultimate futility of divine and human pride and injustice. Their lofty status and their power are fleeting illusions. Soon they will be replaced by the cold reality of death and divine judgment. The psalm concludes with a final desperate and magnificent plea from the psalmist Asaph. And he talks about God. He says, Arise, O God, and judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. This is the final and climatic prayer for God to intervene where human rulers have failed. The cry, Arise, O God, echoes the pleas from the previous psalms, such as Psalm 74, verse 22, where the psalmist begs God to arise, O God, and plead your cause. Here, the cause is the same, God's justice and his universal sovereignty. The psalmist wants God to rise up from his apparent inaction and act as the ultimate judge. The reason for this plea is a confident declaration of God's universal reign. For all nations belong to you. This affirms God's supreme authority and ownership over the entire world. All nations are his, and so he has the perfect right and the perfect power to execute the righteous judgment over them all. This is the ultimate resolution and the promise of injustice. Both divine and human leaders may fail, and because of their jurisdiction, societies will totter. But the one true, sovereign God will ultimately rise up and make all things right. Psalm 82 is a powerful and dramatic psalm that gives voice to the deep longing for justice in the world where both divine and human leaders so often fail. It provides a sobering warning to those in power, while giving a profound hope to the oppressed, reminding us all that God is the ultimate judge, who will one day make all things right. So what profound wisdom can we draw from these psalms in our wisdom trek for today? Firstly, the psalm offers an immense comfort to those who feel they have no recourse against injustice. God sees, hears, and judges every unjust decision made by those in power, whether it be divine or human. We can find solace in knowledge that God himself presides over the ultimate court of appeal. Secondly, it is a sober warning for all in positions of authority, from divine to national leaders to parents, that our power is not our own. It's a divine commission, and we are accountable to God on how we use it, particularly in our care and defense of the vulnerable. Thirdly, it reminds us that the apparent power and pride of the unjust divine and human rulers is just temporary. Despite the titles, their influence, and their wealth, they can ultimately be mortals who will die and be judged. We should not envy this fleeting success, but rather trust at God's enduring justice. And finally, the psalmist's plea, "Arise, O God, and judge the earth," becomes our own prayer. We can confidently ask God to intervene in the injustices that we see in our world, knowing that His authority is supreme and His ultimate judgment is certain and just. Let's commit ourselves to living and leading with the righteous, upholding the rights of the poor, upholding the rights of the oppressed, and trusting in God who will preside over the heavens' courts and will one day judge the whole earth. Thank you for joining me on this powerful trek through Psalm 82. I trust that this exploration of God's supreme justice has resonated with your own journey and equipped you to trust in Him for ultimate vindication. Join me again next time and we will begin a new segment in Wisdom Trek, continuing to uncover the timeless truths of God's Word. Until then, keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I'll see you next time for more daily wisdom.